really appreciate you. And I appreciate all of you for sharing those very warm and loving feelings about things that you would teach if you were asked to be teaching something right now. And I'm sure, I believe this is how you're showing up based on the things you want to teach. So before we get started, what I'd like to do is to acknowledge the Indigenous land and culture of New York. We honor the land as the creator intended, in that we commit to keep it clean and support efforts to make it safe for all. We can show honor to the native keepers of the land by recognizing the value of their culture, by learning the truth of their history and how it shaped this great country. And to piggyback off of what Elijah said, we know that there are some really unsettling things that are happening right now with the mass shootings. And we want to say to you that we stand with you. And we want you to remember to take care of you, because you are so important. Take care of your mental health. That is so important. Your loved ones and each other. So what we'd like to do in light of these mass shootings that have occurred over the last couple of weeks, one right here in our own state of New York, we'd like for you to take like just 10 seconds of moment of silence. Just 10 seconds. Thank you. Thank you all. Now, as Elijah also said, we have an amazing presentation today. We have two individuals who will be speaking about something that I am very eager to hear. It is about new Americans, your neighbors, your community. We're going to learn about new Americans in our communities. We will hear the story of Olivier Mandevu and how he came to New York from the Democratic Republic of the Congo in 2007 for safety from persecution and for opportunities to build a better life. Olivier will share about the challenges he faced integrating into a new culture, raising his family, and how he's overcome barriers and worked to heal from the traumatic experiences he endured in this country of origin. Olivier hopes that by sharing his story, he can help to build a welcoming community that fosters a sense of belonging for new Americans. Now, the New York State Office for New Americans, ONA, was founded in 2012, and it welcomes immigrants to New York State and help them in achieving their American dream. Now, a little bit about our two speakers. Olivier Mandevu is a program analyst at the New York State Office of New Americans. Olivier has a Master of Business Administration and has worked in various New York State agencies and private sector. We also have with us Cynthia Stewart. She is the Ramirez June Developmental Navigator for the Office for New Americans. She is she works in partnership with the New York State Developmental Disabilities Planning Council. Cynthia has a Master of Science in mental health counseling from the state of New York at New Paltz. Please, I now yield the floor over to Cynthia.
So thank you, Fanny and Elijah, for that really beautiful introduction and acknowledgement. I'll set the stage a little bit before passing it over to Olivier. As Fanny mentioned, Olivier and I work at the New York State Office for New Americans, ONA, which has the mission to support new Americans in New York State to integrate into the civic, economic, and social fabric of New York State and help them to achieve their American dream through a variety of free services through our network. And I lead the Ramirez June Initiative at the Office for New Americans, which builds capacity of the Office for New Americans statewide network. We have about 97 grantees across New York State that are housed within community-based organizations that are trusted by the local New American communities. The Ramirez June Initiative builds capacity to help immigrants, all new Americans who have intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families in connecting with vital disability resources and information and services. And by new Americans, this term that we use really refers to all newcomers in New York State. So people who were born in another country and now live in New York. They could be refugees, asylees, undocumented individuals, all newcomers to the state, as well as their families. The Ramirez June Initiative builds capacity through building partnerships between the immigration world and the disability world and finding where those worlds already intersect and learning from them. We host multilingual workshops for new American communities and also for providers and create multilingual resources. And we are funded by and work in partnership with the New York State Developmental Disabilities Planning Council. And here is a picture of our staff at the recent Black, Puerto Rican, Hispanic, and Asian Legislative Caucus, where Olivier and I attended. We also met with the Secretary of State there, and these are some of our colleagues at the Department of State, where ONA is housed. And I think that, it's really been a pleasure to work with Olivier, and the conversations that we've had as coworkers and learning more about him has really inspired me and has inspired this workshop today where Olivier will share his story. And so thank you, Olivier, for sharing with everyone today and being vulnerable and open and honest so that others can learn from your story. We have some great pictures to share with you too from the DRC, from Olivier's village. And without further ado, I'll pass it over to Olivier.
Great. Thanks so much, Cynthia. I should start by thanking Cynthia for introducing me to the Early Care and Learning Center, and also for working with me on this presentation. And I'm also grateful to Fanny and Elijah for the invitation. So my name is Olivier Mandevu. I was born and raised in Democratic Republic of the Congo. So some people call it DRC. As you can see on the map, it's that huge land in the center of Africa, bordered by 9 countries. Some people also call it informally Congo Kinshasa, like I said, DRC, DR Congo, or the Congo. So it used to be called Zaire, but names keep changing. I don't know why. And it is the second largest country in Africa and the 11th largest in the world. DRC has a surface area equivalent to that of Western Europe, so a huge land right there. Congo has also so many natural resources, including minerals such as cobalt, copper, coltan, diamond, hydropower potential, significant arable land, immense biodiversity, and it is also said that it is the world's second largest rainforest. It is widely known that all of our Congo's modern tech I'm sorry, all of our modern tech, electronic products such as smartphones, electric vehicles, and machines all have some DRC minerals in them. iPhones, laptops, all of these electronic devices, all of them have some Congo minerals in them. Yet Congo is classified among the poorest countries in the world. We still have people who go to bed hungry, big children with malnutrition, all kinds of issues. Congo was ruled under kingdoms before colonization, and then slavery. I would say that slavery had so many adverse consequences upon the whole continent of Africa, and particularly upon Congo. We lost so many millions of lives, and so many homes, towns, villages were depopulated. Many Africans were killed in slaving wars or remained enslaved in Africa. People were taken for warlords, and were forced to engage in the slave trade, and that promoted an atmosphere of lack of law and violence. And then came, like I said, colonial time. So this was ruled by King Leopold of Belgium, who viciously and oppressively ruled this country as his own property, and then as a Belgian colony in 1985 up to 1960, when Congo gained independence. So the colonial rule undermined, fragmented, weakened existing kingdom political and military institutions. The colonial people ruled on the premise divide and rule, or just conquer policy, which is gaining and maintaining power by breaking up larger concentrations of power into pieces that individually have less power than the one implementing the strategy. So basically, the colonial rule has kind of dismantled or uprooted, deleted the existing infrastructure, whether political, economic, social, everything was kind of deleted. So, and that left Congo as segmented, weakened, delusioned, confused nation. And that situation hindered the country's ability to kind of move on after the colonial period. And so people who were left in power since 1960 up to now, so I'm counting how many years? I'm counting more than almost 60, I would say 62 countries since Congo gained independence. So Congo was left in the hands of people who were already corrupt from the previous colonial system. So leaving the leadership in those hands has even worsened the situation. And that situation really complicated the situation up to the level that DRC was plunged into so many civil wars. The first one happened in 1964, and then the worst one happened in 1996, and then 1998. So the one that broke out in 1998, that's really the one that affected the country the most. I was living in the southern part of DRC, and we were all kicked out of that area and back into the eastern side where I was born. We got there in 1999, the beginning. We lived there in the eastern part of DRC up to 2004. when another war broke out. We were forced out of that small area of our refuge into a neighboring country known as Burundi. Burundi, it's when you look at the map of DRC, you can see Burundi nearby. See Burundi, Bujumbura on the eastern side, not far from Lake Tanganyika or Tanzania, and you'll see Rwanda north. So my family was kicked out of the eastern part. You'll see where it says Bukavu, into Burundi, 2004. And I was in college then in that small country, Rwanda. So the incident happened June 2004, August 13, 2004, in a small refugee camp near Bujumbura in Burundi. The camp was attacked. It was around 10 p.m. at night. Camp was attacked with people armed with all kinds of weapons, including machetes and other vicious tools. And in a period less than 2 hours, they murdered 166 people, including my own mother and my own brother, who came immediately before me. And my wife lost her parents too, and siblings. And my sister who came with me here and brother, they were all shot, but they're fine now. So so it was really a tragedy that we had never experienced. Many people were deeply affected. So in 2007, cutting the story short, we came to the US. So after a long process of going through all of the immigration paperwork through the US Department of State, and DHS was involved too, and many other bodies at the international level were involved, including UNHCR. So we got here April of 2007. Before I talk about our time here in the US, I just have to, so that's my village. When you see down those houses, white houses down there, that picture is current. That's where I was born. And that area, the war is still going on there. Houses are still being burned. I still have uncles. I still have aunts still living there. That's my home village. Those huts there, yeah, not far from my area too. So what I can talk about, the brutal colonial rule, I just have to go back and just mention this, has resulted into so much loss for my country in terms of social, moral, cultural, economic, and political resources. Maybe that can be a separate topic for the future, but that itself tells a lot. And that's why you'll see so many families have been dislocated, homes have been destroyed, property and social status, even moral compass has been deeply damaged at the social level, political level. Like I said, institutions have been viciously damaged. And so this is really what has resulted into what I just described that happened during all of those civil wars up to the Gatumba massacre that I just described. All of these evil events are just a result of that brutal colonial period. And like I said, the elite who is supposed to really dig the country out of this hole are also corrupt. Sometimes they don't know how to dig the country out. So to cut the story short, like I said, in 2007, we got here April 27 in Albany. And now I have to talk about challenges because I'm trying to stick to my time here. The first challenge that we did encounter, thanks so much for showing that good picture. I walked those streets. It's a beautiful, beautiful country. I remember growing up, walking those places, those waters, fishing. We have so much water. It's really a beautiful land. Thanks so much for showing that picture. Like I said, one of the challenges is language, and language is not just a challenge that I faced myself, but I think it's a challenge that most immigrants face. I spoke some English. You know, you speak some English with accent. I still have accent for sure. So when you come here, you talk. I remember when I was on the airplane, I could talk, but I love talking to people. I love engaging people. I love learning from people. I love interacting with people. On the airplane, I could talk to people, and they could not understand me. And when they talked back, I couldn't understand. My siblings and other people I came with, they couldn't even say a word. That was a big concern. You know, you're coming to a new country, you can't speak. It's a big challenge there. And when you don't speak, then you're not learning. And you can get a job. And even if you can get a job, you can't really get a decent job when you don't have the language. It's a big, big challenge. You can make friends when you don't speak. And that impedes you networking. I like a definition that I saw about networking by Ronald Barkley. It says networking is defined as a goal-oriented behavior which occurs both inside and outside of an organization, focused on creating, cultivating, and utilizing interpersonal relationships. So when you don't have the language, your interpersonal relationships are like lacked inside of you, and that can really be depressing. I remember I was just sitting in my apartment. I didn't know where to go. I could take a bike and ride around because I was feeling like something is just lacked inside of me, and it was demanding me of releasing it. That's interpersonal relationships. You know, we're human beings are social animals, and so we need to open ourselves to each other. And I felt like I wasn't opening myself to other people. So language is really a big challenge. And you feel like you're not supporting that greater organizational communication. And you feel like you're not contributing to the community when you don't have the language, when you're not interacting, when you're getting out, when you're not networking, when you're not making friends. You feel like you're just sitting there idle. Sometimes you can start feeling about yourself as not having any meaning in the community because you feel like you're not giving out anything to the community. It can really be a very depressing situation when you don't have the language. And you can be aware of available resources. And you can even find ways to grow yourself and to give back to the community, like I said. And you feel like your space is missing in the community when you don't have the language. And I remember I could just ride a bike and going down to USCRI, which is the settlement agency that I came through. I could go there every single day. And something they could ask me, oh, do you have an appointment here? No, I don't have an appointment. Then why are you here? I'm just here to hang out. But truly speaking, I didn't even know how to express what I needed, but what I needed was getting myself out there. And I was searching for my personal meaning in the community. And that personal meaning was kind of lacked into that lack of language. So the other, and that's why I really commend the Office for New Americans ESL program, and which I'm personally, and my wife included, and my brothers and sisters, with the beneficiaries of this program. Funding the ESL program is really key for immigrants, providing them with access to language. So this is why I have so much respect for the Office for New Americans funding for the ESL program, because it helps us to have access to the language. Cultural barrier, which is connected to the language. You know, to be honest, when you come to the new country, you don't have a good mastery of the language. For sure, you have certain words, phrases, metaphors, culture-specific slang. You just don't know how to express. And you can pretend to know them. And that makes you feel bad. You feel excluded. Because people are talking certain specific types of language that you can't even understand, you can't even talk. You feel bad about yourself and you feel you're not included. And sometimes you pronounce certain words, be friendly, and because you don't know the culture, that can be offending on the other side. Maybe those words are acceptable in your own culture, like complimenting people. We do compliment each other differently depending on our culture. For certain people, when you say, oh, nicely dressed, for certain people, depending on their culture, it can be very offending. They can be very offended. I made those kinds of mistakes because I was just coming from my culture and complimenting people from my culture, and that some people were very offended, and that made me feel bad about myself. So I'm not learning anything. I just keep making mistakes. So the other barrier too, in terms of culture, you don't know how to show interest in other people because you want them to feel like you have interest in them, but you don't know how to express that. Sometimes you feel like, oh, it's their fault, but it may be their fault too because you don't know how to address them. The other challenge, I have my time. The other challenge, I spoke about networking, but going back to that one, you come here with certain skills and you don't know how to network with the right people from your field. And you feel like you lacked inside of yourself. I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense. That can be very depressing too.
Olivier, you're making total sense. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other challenge, and I'll come back to that before I conclude, is parenting. Like you did see from the picture, my wife and I have 5 kids. We're all born here, and they don't have accent. We have accent, and yeah, believe it or not, we sometimes feel like we have different cultures. We feel like they are quickly Americanized, quicker than myself and my wife, and that itself can be a challenge. So, and as parents, we are always working to find balance, not making them feel alienated from our way of life. And we also have to help them to help us to not feel alienated from their way of life. So finding that balance can be a challenge. And my wife and I are privileged. We've gone to school. not so many immigrants have gone to school. We can read. We have a whole section in our house full of books. So we read to understand how to help our kids. But there are some immigrant parents who can read all right. That can be even tougher. So, that's a challenge. Another challenge, financial instability. I remember my wife and I weren't really making good money. We're so privileged now. We've worked hard. We have good jobs. We feel so grateful. And we've been able to buy a nice, decent home for our kids to live in a safe environment, go to better school system. But when you're really working low income jobs and you can afford better housing neighborhood, that can be a huge challenge upon you. It can weigh heavily on you as a parent. You feel like you're not providing for your family. The other challenge too, when you're an immigrant, you don't have a good understanding of rules and regulations and laws of the land, and that can impede your ability to provide good parenting. Another challenge, issues related to racism and prejudice. Elijah was talking about massacres and killings going on. Sometimes when we're sitting around the kitchen table, my wife and I are asking ourselves, how should we address this issue? How should we frame the conversation around racism to make sure that we engage our kids in a constructive manner, not in a way that tears them down, but in a constructive manner? That itself requires you to be fully equipped in understanding what's going on, and we don't feel we're really equipped in that area. Parenting is really huge. At work, like I said, work when you come here. Let me talk about professional immigrants. Come here, you fumble with English language, and number two, you don't have connections. You don't know how to network. Number three, your degrees are not recognized here in the U.S. And the U.S. workforce system has higher standards compared to other countries, especially those coming out of low income countries. The workforce standards are a little bit lower. So you come here with those skills, and employers feel like your standards aren't really meeting their standards. That can be very depressing. This is one of the reasons I have so much respect for the Office for New Americans programs. We do have a program called the Professional Pathway Program, which is really helping to unlock so many. Thank you for putting it out there, so that we can connect highly skilled immigrants with resources they need to move from low-paying jobs into decent jobs or employment, and help them regain their career path. It's good for their families. It's good for the community. It's also good for our workforce community, because I always share this. We like sitting, or we have skills just sitting idle in our backyard, and we're not taking advantage of them. But ONA really coming up with this program, I have so much respect for that. And you'll see immigrants also coming here with disabilities, whether physical disabilities, mental disabilities, and where I come from, we don't even have services for disabled people. They're not existent. Even the concept itself is new to most of us. And the other problem too, people with disabilities, they are negatively labeled as subhumans. And there is also taboo around that. You don't even have to share that you're disabled. whether physical or mental. So coming here, you like living in hiding. So the ONA, the ONA Ramirez June Initiative, which Cynthia oversees, is really a good program. And the way I see it, Cynthia, you may not agree with me, but the way I see this program is helping all of these people with disabilities regain their dignity. Because if you didn't have access to these services, if you were labeled as subhuman and it was a taboo to talk about your situation, now you come here to the US and the ONA Ramirez June Initiative is helping you come out of the shadow and providing access to the services you need. That's a very important program. Inclusion. Things that can make you feel excluded can range from social customs to more significant issues such as attitudes towards gender, religious diversity, ethnicity, sexuality, race, which can all be different. So you come to a new land, you don't feel included. You may have a job, a decent job. You may be educated. You may be living in a nice neighborhood, but still feel excluded. You feel excluded because there are no linkages that seek to bring people together. This is why ONA has initiated a program called the Navigator Program, which really seeks to bring communities together, regardless of their differences, whether based on color, creed, religion. So I oversee some of these programs. I'm on the ground, and I observe how people who can really come together, coming together. So that is needed. Another thing that we do to make sure that people feel included, citizenship program services. I'm one of the beneficiaries of the ONA Citizenship Program Services through USCRI, which is a local resettlement agency funded by ONA. If you're here as an immigrant and you want to be a citizen, there's no way really you can do it on your own. You need some support. And ONA has really investing into supporting so many people, my family included, into becoming a US citizen. I applaud ONA for that. Legal access. We provide so many legal services. I don't have too much time to go into that, but I always share with my grantees, if you have a section of your population who lack access to legal services, even for those who have access to legal services, you're like infringing, you're like affecting in a negative way their rights. So we are all protected when we all have equal access to legal services. But if a certain section of our population lacks access to legal services, then everybody else is threatened. So let me end by that. I don't know if maybe anyone has any comments, questions. I don't know if I don't want to go over my time. Yeah, we still have time. Maybe you have questions, maybe you have comments, maybe you have something to add. Let me turn the floor back to Fanny, Cynthia, Elijah. Thank you.
Wow, that's I can just say wow. For the sake of time, I think Cynthia may have a few comments or additional comments to make, and then we'll open the floor to everyone. But wow, very deep story. Cynthia?
Sure. So thank you so much, Olivier, for sharing. I feel like we've all learned so much from your story, and thank you for your kind words about the Ramirez June Initiative as Olivier said, we're hoping to build capacity to assist new Americans with developmental disabilities and other disabilities, because we know that new Americans and people with limited proficiency in English face a lot of barriers to accessing disability services, as well as mental health services that are needed for their health and well-being. So we're hoping to create positive change to address that. I would love to turn it over to questions. Maybe I'll start with my question, Olivier. If you could share briefly, about, I'm always interested in, when you share about parenting and your 5 beautiful children, like what are some things that are new adjusting to schools, like in schools, and they have like learning about new holidays and they do craft projects or birthday celebrations. If you wanted to share a little bit about that, what that is like.
Thank you. That's a good question. Parenting isn't just a challenge for immigrants. I believe it's a challenge for most parents, especially with COVID. Remember, COVID and kids were learning from home, and they have all of these systems, Blackboard and Google Classroom. That was a challenge to me and my wife. So helping our kids adjust to the Google Classroom system, to the virtual learning system, it was really a challenge. And the other challenge too, when you're new, when you're an immigrant and you really don't understand the American educational system, you're invited for a parent conference call. Sometimes you don't know how to address some of the issues.
Mm.
And some of the issues that our kids are Americans, and we are also Americans, proud Americans, but in one way or another, we do have differences in terms of values. So when there is an issue to be addressed around the kitchen table, they are addressing it from different values than our values. Then, like I said, it really becomes a challenge because they are kids and we are adults and we are parents. So we need to find a way that addresses it in a way that does not infringe in their value systems. So that can be a challenge. And also homework. I went to school a couple years here or 3 years here. My wife's the same. She did some schooling here, but most of her schooling is from back home. And sometimes we struggle with supporting them with their homework. And they come with certain types of celebrations that we do have to celebrate. And Daniel, I'm giving you the example of Daniel. We had a concert last night at the Colony High School. He brings so many instruments, music instruments. These instruments are new to me. And he comes, hey, Daddy, let's play this instrument. So show me how to play this instrument. It's new to me. Sometimes I feel bad. I can't help my son learn this instrument. So, and these are like American instruments. And the other problem too, the instruments I grew up with, I don't have them here. They were all destroyed during the war. And I feel bad. I can't use those instruments to teach them about my culture. And my wife and I have been thinking about maybe making a trip someday home and come up with some cultural instruments, tools, to help our kids learn about our culture too. So I'm just sharing a few, but there are so many cultures, even birthday celebration. We do have a way of celebrating our birthday. For me, it's going out, play soccer, spend time in the woods. For them, it's buying a cake. Cake is new to me. I didn't have cake when I was growing up. But for them, without cake, birthday doesn't make sense. For me, birthday is going out and play soccer, run in the woods, fish, catch animals, run behind animals, spend 3 days in the woods, climb like upon trees, but for them, doesn't stick much.
I have a question for you, Olivier, you know, I am so glad that you are courageous enough to share your story. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Elijah is going to fix this video thing so I can be on video right now. But I wanted to ask a question going back to something that you mentioned about it's almost like two cultures in your home, you know, like this, one that you grew up with within, and then they're your children. And I was born and raised in South Carolina. Believe it or not, there were some things I totally identified with that you were sharing, because coming from the South to the North was pretty challenging for me. And there were certain things I did not teach my son about the culture of the South. And I'm trying to do that now. He's an adult. And I'm wondering, how do you keep some of your culture in your home, sharing it with your children? How do you do some of that?
That's a good question. Very good question. And I can see you, Fanny. Your video is on.
Yes, my video.
Yeah, one of the ways, and we really do value our culture, and we want to keep our culture, and we want our kids to keep our culture, because when you lose your culture, you're losing a piece of yourself, and you're even impeding your potential. You're even impeding where you need to go. So you can't really be where you need to be by deleting your culture. So you really have to keep your culture. You need to be proud of your culture. You need to be proud of your way of life. And you need to perpetuate your way of life. Of course, you need to be flexible for areas that need improvement. As you interact with other people, you may discover areas that need improvement, areas of shortcomings. And believe me or not, I see my picture. We were on vacation going to Ohio. I'm there behind my family. I was driving. That was a very exciting moment back in July. And thank you for sharing that picture, Cynthia. Believe me or not, every culture has its own positives and negatives. It doesn't mean that my culture is perfect. No, my culture has shortcomings, and we have certain practices that we should really get rid of. Definitely. Like my culture, not until recently, didn't have respect for women. That's bad. That should be deleted. Women should be treated equally like everybody else. People with disabilities in my culture didn't have respect. That's bad. Sometimes children didn't have much respect in my culture. I have 5 children. How could you tell me that you have respect for me when you don't respect my children? So definitely. And going back to your question, one of the ways that we use to keep both cultures is language. I speak 7 languages. My wife speaks like 5. But we do have our own language, which is Kinyamulenge, which is a language I claim to know better, even though my grandfather, who just passed away, couldn't believe me. He used to say that I didn't know that language. I say, what are you talking about? I think I know this language. No, you don't know the language. You're still learning about it. So, so that language, it's our language, Kinyamulenge, we speak it. Our kids don't quite well yet speak it, but my wife and I talk it. We try to talk to them in that language. Now they can understand it. Before they couldn't even understand it. Now they can understand it, but the problem is speaking back. So we're working on that piece to make sure that they can talk back to us. Number two, we meet other fellow Africans through different functions, cultural functions, so that they can have an exposure to that culture. And we try to buy some cultural tools, like things that we used to drink milk from, just different cultural stuff. We buy those and other kinds of tools. So we share stories with them, how we grew up. Stories. And they you can tell they have so much interest in learning about our stories. And they say, can we go back and see where you guys are from? We're working on that. And someday when the situation is safe, we will definitely take them back and so that they can visit.
Oh, that is so wonderful. That is so wonderful. We could keep you all day, but I need to get to some questions in the box. We do have a question here. How did your expectations of coming to America differ from the reality? That was a question.
I saw that on the chat. Let me trust me or not. When you're not really very well informed about America, you may have wrong information about it, and that wrong information can build wrong expectations. For some people, America is like second to heaven. It's second to heaven. Some people even they're just talking and being silly. No one dies in America. No one dies.
Oh.
But when you get here, it's a different reality. To be honest with you, I didn't know in America I could see homeless people. I didn't know that until I got here. And I love talking to people. Some people some friends say it's a benefit, an advantage. But my wife said, be careful. Be careful. But I really love talking to people. I like that. Even when you come to my neighborhood, all of my neighbors are like my friends. I tell them, come knock on my door anytime and just have a conversation. And they do. Some of them even tell me, oh, I couldn't believe that I could talk to a guy like you from Africa. And they teach me stuff. When they see me learning, like cutting grass, they join me sometimes. Say, I can join you. We can meet for a cup of coffee. So one of the expectations, really seeing people transcending color of their skin and become good neighbors and sharing cultural practices and sharing skills. You know, my neighbors, regardless of what the color of our skin, they've taught me so many things, a lot of things. And what I've been able to learn, we deprive ourselves of so many things by being discriminative. Being discriminative does not help anyone at all, because we can learn so much from each other and we can benefit each other in so many ways by transcending our differences. I couldn't believe that I could transcend. Not because I'm racist, no, because how they said, oh, no, black people have their own space, white people have their own space. It's segregated. So even they are talking to white people. But when I came here, it was false. It was really false. We have good people from both sides, very good people. My family has benefited from people from both sides. And employment system is really different here. standards are set up very high.
Mm.
So I don't want to really spend too much time into that, maybe next time.
Yes.
But we have so many expectations that conflict with the reality when you get here.
Absolutely. This has been so profound. I can't thank you enough, Olivier, for sharing your story. And there will be a next time. Cynthia, how can people get a hold of you and talk to your organization and how to get additional information? Because what you're doing is totally phenomenal. Olivia just sang your praise. And so what can we do? Yeah. How do we get a hold of you? Yes.
Thank you, Fanny and Elijah, for holding space for this conversation. And Olivier, thank you so much for really speaking from your heart and sharing so much. So you can, in the Q&A, I'll put it in the chat as well. One, we have a hotline to access, your local ONA connection and connect new Americans with our ONA grantees. Our hotline is 1-800-566-7636. I'll put that in the chat. And we also have an email, newamericans@DOS for Department of State .ny.gov. And we also have a website. I'll put that in the chat as well. And would love to connect with you all and hope that we'll have many more conversations. And just thank you all for joining us today.
Yes, thank you both. This was totally phenomenal. Elijah has dropped some information in the chat. And for those of you who are looking for information, the recording will be available. And on that recording, there will be information, hopefully, on how to connect with Cynthia and Olivier. Again, thank you both so very much. And thank you all for joining us today for this phenomenal presentation. And we look forward to seeing you next month. And by the way, we will have these two individuals back with us if they will come. So we know that you could have spent your time anyplace else, someplace else today, but we're so glad you decided to spend it with us. Be kind to yourself. Take care of you. There's only one of you, and you are so special. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.